Hello, and welcome to the fourth and last webinar in our latest series of webinars by Phrase, where we introduce our newest September releases. My name is Klára Heřmánkova. I'm on the marketing team at Phrase, and I'm very happy that you're joining us to learn more about the enhanced and even more intuitive Phrase Orchestrator. It is a great pleasure that I can introduce to you today's expert speakers. They are Danielle McDowall, our product manager, and Christin Sten, our product marketing manager. And together they are going to cover the following. First, they will give us a roundup of what Phrase Orchestrator is and what benefits it brings. Then they will introduce the new enhancements coming with the latest release. And Danielle has also prepared a practical demonstration for us. Finally, we'll also hear about some of the use cases and best practices for Phrase Orchestrator. We will wrap up the session by addressing your questions, so please submit them via Slido as we go. And now I will hand over to Christin.
Great. Thank you so much, Klára, for the introduction. My name is Christin. I am a Phrase product marketing manager, so my job is to spread the word about all the new and exciting products, features, and also improvements. And I'm here today to tell you about Phrase Orchestrator and how it can help you build customized end-to-end automation, ultimately getting rid of manual steps so you can easily build and scale your localization processes. So what does scaling localization automation mean? So this is likely a situation that many large companies and organizations have found themselves in before. Once localization processes become more mature and sophisticated, you'll also have to face more challenges. And because global expansion requires the scaling of localization. So with each expansion into a new market, the intricacies of managing multiple languages, multiple cultures, and content variation multiply exponentially. For example, more and more stakeholders are involved, the degree of coordination and project management increases, and suddenly there are more time-consuming tasks to handle than before. And with more complex localization demands, organizations at some point will need to tailor their automation solution and in order to stay agile and efficient. And without a tailored automation solution in place, it can quickly become an ever-growing challenge. And this is where our workflow automation solution, Phrase Orchestrator, comes into play. With Phrase Orchestrator, you can customize and automate localization processes yourself across the whole Phrase localization suite and build your highly tailored workflows in seconds. So you can exactly map out your desired processes and build workflows according to your business needs, as simple or as complex as you wish. This will allow you to always meet project timelines, increase overall efficiency, and save valuable time and developer resources. The Phrase Orchestrator comes with an intuitive, no-code workflow editor that is designed with a graphical drag-and-drop interface that lets you easily construct and visualize workflows. And in addition, the workflow editor is equipped with structured actions and triggers and a wide set of conditions, including workflow branching, event filtering, and also dynamic references. So you can control the full Phrases functionality from just one single interface. So now that we've known the full potential of Phrase Orchestrator, let's also take a look at the benefits and the ways how it can help your team work more efficiently. So firstly, with Phrase Orchestrator, you can fully automate your localization process and customize your localization workflows according to your exact needs. You reduce costs and won't need to spend large sums on costly middleware or developers, but instead you free up their time so they can work on and create other value add. This also means that you avoid waiting months on development, and therefore you save valuable time and speed up processes by up to 6 times. Because Phrase Orchestrator gives you all the tools you need in order to build and customize workflows yourself. And of course, automating workflows will always pay into less or even completely eliminate manual and time-consuming processes that drain resources and invite errors. And with Phrase Orchestrator, you can also benefit from the aspect of visualizing your workflows, which means that you can follow and monitor the workflow and at the same time enjoy peace of mind while using our resistant and secure infrastructure. So here we have it all, a lot of powerful benefits that will certainly give your localization process a boost by adding more speed and also full control over your workflows. Great, so now let's take a look at the series of exciting new capabilities that we just released about a week ago, which is the largest since product launch in February and packed with lots of very exciting and nice improvements. And for that, I will hand it over to our Phrase Orchestrator product expert, Danielle, who's going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, thanks, Christin. Hi, everyone. Just as mentioned, I'm Danielle McDowall, the product manager for Orchestrator. I'm going to talk you through some of our new features that we've released for our latest cadence. So I guess if we jump to the next slide, there are 4 main items here that we want to talk about. These are 4 items that we're super excited to have released. Like it says here, we've taken another leap forward with lots of new and innovative enhancements where we're particularly focused both on ease of use and fundamentals. We're focusing on how folks can use Orchestrator a little bit more easily. So if I were to jump to templates, we've released what's known as a template library, where before you were creating, and you still can, creating workflows from scratch. That's adding your trigger, adding actions. Doing all this required some understanding of exactly what use case you want to build, which takes a bit of time because not only do you have to have a bit of an understanding of TMS and or strings to convey that use case, it therefore takes time to configure them to make sure you're getting the value you need. That's still fine. But what we've introduced is a template library, which right now shows you 6 of our main use cases for TMS and strings that you can just import immediately into your account. This gets you started up faster without having to add all these actions in yourself, configure them. They're all pre-configured for you. What you should also bear in mind is you can still edit these templates that meet your use case and then go back and add another one as you want. And having all this now configured in a library, again, means you can get started much sooner with Orchestrator, up to 6 times faster, in fact. And then for a fundamental, we also released file handling, something that seems maybe not specifically shiny when you're looking at workflow templates, something you can look at immediately and see the value you get from it. But with file handling, this is another thing we're super excited about. So when I mentioned earlier that a workflow is composed of actions, you pass content between those actions in order to execute whatever it is you're looking to do. And you could do that by passing the content from a previous action to another. This content was in a JSON format, which is fine if you're only wanting to pass like smaller amounts of content and you're not doing anything that requires a file. So if you did have actions in your workflow that does expect a file, well, we didn't have file handling before, but now we do. And with that, we've enabled extra actions. Again, weren't there previously because we didn't have file handling, but with file handling, you can now see greater actions. So we have more parity with our TMS and strings APIs. And then for Field Picker, another ease of use initiative that we've released. This for me is probably my personal favorite. If you're not super familiar with a JSON path, and I guess if you're not a developer, you probably aren't, Field Picker is something that's super exciting. So previously, you had to know how to be really specific with the JSON syntax to receive, for example, content from a previous action, which meant you had to type out something that looked very codey. But now with Field Picker, this shows you the available sources from other actions and it types out that syntax for you, so you don't have to type that. And also, if you weren't super sure where to get the information, Field Picker presents you those available sources so you can look around for what you think is needed. Example being if before you didn't know how to say, I want project UID, so I need to type it out in this particular way. I'm not exactly sure where to get that. But with Field Picker, we show you the available sources. It's probably going to be in a particular place, which again, you will see shortly in a demo. And like I said, it types it out for you, which is great if you're not super technical minded. And then, yeah, lastly, scheduled triggers. A bit of a delighter, if you ask me. So again, where I mentioned your workflow is composed of triggers and actions. The triggers right now defines when your workflow actually will start to execute. These triggers previously were all only event-based. Take, for example, you had your workflow composed and it does this action, that action. These actions execute for the trigger for like job created or project completed. These kind of, again, event-based triggers. But what if you want a workflow to start upon a given schedule? So say if you wanted a workflow to run every hour, well, you can now do that with scheduled triggers. You could have it run every minute if you wanted to. But it's good for those kind of use cases where you want something to happen, perhaps like the first Monday of the month. You can now add a scheduled trigger as part of your workflow to do that. Again, for our more technical users, you can be really specific and type out what's called a cron expression. But if you're not as technical, then we still kept that in mind. We've given you some custom, pre-configured presets. So if you want to set it every 15 minutes or every day at midnight, we give you those options in the scheduled trigger. But that being said, this is a lot of me talking. So why don't we actually show you some of this in practice with our pre-recorded demo? Okay, here we are in Orchestrator Editor, where you can see I've got a small workflow already started. One of the cool things we've been working on in the previous release is a new trigger. So if you look at this workflow, you can see this workflow will begin as a job is created, which means each of the following steps will start to occur as a job is created. But if I take you over to another screen here, you can see I've got another trigger called schedule. So instead of being event-based, where the trigger happens because an event passes, we can make this trigger based on our custom specified schedule. So clicking that and then going to the schedule view, you can configure that trigger, that particular schedule by choosing from a couple of options here. So we've set some custom presets for you. For every 15 minutes, every hour, maybe every day at midnight, which I'm going to choose here. It then validates it for you, gives you the expected trigger date. So, you can see at midnight every day here, but if you want to be specific with the custom cron, you can do that here by changing this. So hit save. And then you can see that's updated to show you the particular cron expression it's following, but you can come in and change that anytime. But what we're going to do is go through this workflow I have over here for a demo to walk you through some of the other features that we've also released as part of this particular cycle. So I've got a workflow started here already, which will review any QA flagged content, meaning as my job is created in a particular project, I want to ensure that any translated content by machine translation it is sent to a human to review if even one QA flag is triggered. And you can use an orchestrator workflow to do that instead of manually checking it and manually sending it to a human. But this workflow isn't complete, so we're going to need to update it a little bit. So as I said, the trigger begins when the job is created for that particular project UID, specified here with a placeholder. We then fetch the access tokens to authenticate any of the extra steps that happen after. The job, once it's been machine translated, we need to update it to completed as shown here in the parameters. And then we want to run quality assurance over that particular job, the machine translated job part. But what happens after that? Well, once we run the quality assurance, we then want to check for any QA warnings. So to do that, I'm going to add one of our custom actions to the workflow. Transform JSON with JQ, add that here. I am going to make some quick changes to this, which is to update the name to check for QA warnings so I know more explicitly what this particular action does. And I want to edit the parameters. And here I'm going to show you something that looks a little bit different to how you normally use Orchestrator. So this particular action will receive content from your specified action and will perform a JQ on it that you have written yourself. The output can either be in a raw format, which is in the JSON here, or it can be a file if you want to perform a JQ over a file. In this case, I just want the JSON, so click that. And then I'm going to show you our new feature called Field Picker, which you can see with the icon here in the parameter. Where previously you were typing out whatever you needed here manually in JSON syntax, Field Picker lets you pick it from a particular reference source. In this case, run quality assurance, and then variables, and then raw output. So when I was saying you have to type it out manually yourself, you were expected to type out the curly bracket at raw manually. But with Field Picker, you don't have to do that. It's typed out for you, and you can see the particular source it got that from. So hit apply. You then want to run some JQ that I already have. So I'm just going to paste that in and then hit save. Next, to finish this workflow, I need to add what happens if there's any QA warnings. So if there are no QA warnings, I want to set this job to completed. But if there is a QA warning, I then want to send it to a human. So I've got two actions I need to add here. That would be to set it back to completed. So I need another edit job status, just like our earlier action. And then I want another to actually send it to human. So the action for that is to assign provider from template. Okay, so these two actions are actually stacking on top of each other, which isn't what we want to happen. We want one action to happen if there are no QA warnings, and we want the other to happen if there is. So I need to move this arrow. Yeah, and you can see they now appear side by side, but I now need to update these actions. So for edit job status, I'm just going to add some parameters, which I'll quickly pop in. Okay, for the purposes of the demo, I've just sped up adding all the parameters. But for each of these actions, we need to be specific which job part in particular is updated. So where it says job UID, this should actually be a 1 for the first object in the array, that being the human addition part of the job is marked as completed. And then likewise for assigning from template, where you can see here I've got a template UID shown with a placeholder, but here you would actually add something properly. This is updated to a 1 also. And then what I'm also going to show you with Field Picker is adding some conditions. So I want this one to trigger if there are no QA warnings, and I want this other one to trigger if there is. So condition here, edit, we want it to be not. The variable comes from check for QA warnings, and I'm going to use the raw output, apply. So this says this will happen if this is not true, hit save. And you can see denoted here. And then for the other action, similar, edit, using our Field Picker again to get the information from the previous step, variables, raw output, apply, tick, and then true, save. So you can see the differences there. Now there's just one last action to add. So after we've assigned any providers to that specific job, we want to then notify the provider, which I'll add here. So again, for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to add these all in quickly. Okay, and done. This workflow, once you publish it, will now trigger as a job is created. It will run the quality assurance, check for any QA warnings. It will update it to completed if there's none, but if there is even one QA warning, then we'll assign a provider from a template to then fix and look at that particular QA warning. With this workflow that I've just shown you, you can see how powerful Field Picker is, where previously you had to type out the syntax manually, and if you weren't sure where to get that information from, Field Picker now solves both those problems. If you want to take output from a previous step, you can be specific for whether it's in its raw format, as in a JSON. But with our new file handling that we just released, you can now pass outputs between actions as a file if you choose the file here. This would then update the syntax. And again, using Field Picker, you don't have to type that out yourself. And then lastly, the thing we're most excited about as for this release is our new template library. So I sped up some of how you would create this workflow and even created some of it beforehand, but this would show that there is a bit of time and knowledge needed for creating this workflow, which we appreciate not everyone has. So if you want to get started sooner, all you need to do is go to template library here. And you can see we've got some options already. These are pre-configured use cases that are most common to our customers. We'll be updating these as we go all the time, but you can preview any of those use cases and then import them and start to use them yourself. You can even see that we have the review QA flagged content template already. So for what I just showed you, you can import that yourself here. We're super excited about what we've just released. We're really looking forward to hearing more from yourselves for how these new features make your life easier. Please get in contact with us if you have any questions at all, and I hope you enjoyed this demo. Yeah, so for one, I want to openly acknowledge that it's very bizarre to watch your pre-recorded demo live on a webinar. And I do feel like I use the word excited quite a lot, but those are genuine feelings. So that being said, if we jump to the next slide. So again, there's a lot to be excited about with Orchestrator. The reason I say that is with Orchestrator, there are endless possibilities. It focuses, as you can tell, on automating your manual processes, all with the objective of making your life easier by introducing cost savings and time savings. But if you want to learn a little bit more about how you can realize some common use cases, that's what I'm going to describe for you now. So moving on to probably one of our most common use cases is automated MT quality assessment. So we use MTQE to evaluate translated content. But what would you do with this information? Well, in Orchestrator, you can create a workflow and you can set this MTQE threshold yourself. And then what you would do with this threshold is if anything is below your own configured threshold, it will go to human for review. So where previously this was a manual decision to assign vendors, this takes up quite a lot of time. But with the Orchestrator workflow, you can instead configure this manually. So as a job is created, for example, in a project, and you always want for a given job that the quality is a certain level, because perhaps you know for this project, the quality always needs to be really high or maybe a little bit lower. If it's a little bit lower, you might want to say, I'll trust machine translation to translate this, but at a certain level, I want it to go to human, but only for those jobs that are beneath that particular quality threshold. Again, with Orchestrator, you can be specific about that, which introduces huge time savings, as much as 30 to 60%. But again, that depends on yourself, which you can configure again with an Orchestrator workflow. For me, this is something that is huge. No one wants to be spending all that time assigning the vendors, at least from my perspective. And again, with Orchestrator, that's a really awesome use case. Moving on to a second one, which seems quite different. So imagine your translation job is changed to completed, and let's say it needs to go onto an online repository somewhere. Let's say, for an example, Bitbucket. So the job is being translated, that's great. But as a project manager, where does it go now? Do you then download it from the system and then upload it manually to the online repository? That's, of course, does take time. It can be annoying as well. What if there's somewhere really specific you need to put it and you don't know? When is the job completed? Are you manually checking for that? You can set up a workflow, so it will trigger as the job is completed, and it will automatically, for how you've configured it, send it to this online repository. Again, totally automated. This definitely reduces project management time. And if you want to be really nitpicky about the status updates, you'll even see the job status change from not just completed, but to delivered. So there's amazing full oversight there. And if you're a project manager, oversight is everything. But again, ultimately, as a project manager, you'll see that a time is cut by up to 90% with this kind of workflow. And it's really easy to set up an orchestrator. And then if I move on to the next use case for dynamic, it was a dynamic workflow based on automated QA detection. You saw this already. Kind of similar to the first one, but let's say that quality really, really matters to you. You can set up quality control, a quality control workflow. So if even one QA warning is triggered, let's say it's the example on the slide here for check forbidden terms, then immediately gets sent for review by a human. So ultimately, you'll always have peace of mind that machine translated content will always have a quality assurance check passed over it. And even if one is triggered, it goes to humans. So you're keeping quality, time, and cost in mind as you're using this particular workflow. Saving up to 84% time on your resources. And then moving on to the next workflow. This is one that we've actually recently unlocked, especially as we have new file handling. So this is the automation of pivoting languages. So let's take an uncommon language pair, just for the example here, let's say it's Polish to Thai. We do have community for this. You do have editors who can translate from Polish to Thai, but this can take time to find these editors, and they're probably costly as well because it's a smaller group of people, they charge more. This is where language pivoting comes in. You can extend this one language pair to two by using English in the middle as your pivot language. And by converting it from Polish to English, English to Thai, both these language pairs are more widely available, cheaper. But that being said, you still need to coordinate the movement of your files from the Polish to English, English to Thai, and that's where Orchestrator can come in. So you can set up workflows that will do that for you. But with our new release of file handling, you couldn't previously do this without file handling because, like I said, if you had full marketing content, you would maybe have a workflow where not only are you setting up as a source to pivot project is created. That would be, for example, your first workflow. You want to automate the creation of your second project. So the first project would be Polish to English. As that occurs, we then want the second project to happen. And then where file handling comes in, and the second workflow is you would download the file from project one, and that would be added to project two as the source file. And just like I'm pretty firmly saying, this wasn't possible before file handling. This is a huge workflow that we've just unlocked, something we're definitely really excited about and something we're already seeing customer interest in. But the value for this, I think, is pretty immediate. You combine two processes into one use case. There's less paused time between the two projects that I just described. No one has to make sure that these connect together. It all happens automatically, making the process up to 5 times faster. So again, something we're really excited to start seeing our customers use. And then lastly, so for automatically pre-translating your content using pseudo translation. In a way, I wish we left the pivoted languages as the last slide because for me it's the most exciting, but regardless, this is still a really cool thing you can do in Orchestrator. So imagine you have software localization content where you want to test placement of translated content. Imagine if you're translating from English into German, for example, the content can be longer, the words are longer, that might make something appear weirdly in a box. So you can use pseudo translation, which will essentially populate, let's say, that same box with a dummy translation. So you can test, get early detection if there's any issues, because like if I've described that maybe it's too long or there's a weird character, that kind of thing. Putting this dummy translation in first saves time and effort instead of going with the full translation later and going back and forth, which also brings up costs. Doing this first makes sense. So how do we automate that? Well, as your job is created, you can automate a check for any project that is created but has the metadata for a pseudo translation type. You would then have the pseudo translate action itself, and you can be really specific about the configuration, which is then defined in the action. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. You'll then see your localized text is, well, localized according to your pseudo translation settings. And again, this reduces back and forth, because if you didn't use the pseudo translation but use a full translation, there's a lot of back and forth because there might have been a UI problem, and this reduces your go-to-market time. But using this particular workflow, that's no longer an issue. So again, that's the end of some of the use cases we're showing. There's so much you can do with Orchestrator, but we just want to highlight some of the really cool value props you can get for real life use cases, particularly in localization. And with all the new features that we've brought out, like take file handling and the pivoted languages, template library to get you started sooner. These are all things that we're really, not to use the word again, really excited about. And then just to get your own excitement going also, for anyone who has access to the Phrase Localization Suite, you can request a free 30-day free trial. It's available as an add-on for EU data center customers who have an enterprise subscription. So please, by all means, request a free trial, try it out. And then the reason I'd like to mention that in particular is because if we go to the next slide, we've just brought out a new Talk to the Team initiative. So anyone who has access to Orchestrator already, you can leverage our new Contact the Team. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of Orchestrator. For me, this is something I'm really excited about. If you want to share any of your thoughts, any suggestions, ideas, anything at all, please get in contact with us by following the process there and contact the team. You'll get a hold of myself, product manager for Orchestrator, or Wesley, product director for the automation department. And then lastly, Alex, the lead architect who made Orchestrator. Just please get in contact with us for anything you want to say at all. We want to hear from you, particularly for what you think about our new features and anything else that we might have to go. But yeah, I think that's it from me. Please get in contact.
Thank you, Danielle and Christin, for the presentation and the demo. This was great, and I think we can move on to the questions. So let's have a look. Let's start with the first one. Can I use my connectors with Orchestrator? As in, can I push content directly to Figma, for example?
I'll take that. So that isn't something that we can currently do right now with a specific action for Figma. It is something that is in the roadmap for next year. So we're going to start focusing on our ecosystem in particular. So think third parties. If you want to do, for example, I want to know when something happens, I want it to go to Slack, that would be a Slack action. Likewise, for I want to push content directly to Figma using a Figma connector. Again, not available right now, but it's something that's in the forefront of our minds for the first half, maybe second half of next year. Again, just not to push the contact the team too much, but if you have any live use case examples for how and why you would be using a connector, I would love to hear it.
Thank you. Next one, many thanks for all the insights into your AI features during this week. I'm struggling to find the links to the recorded sessions. Can you help? Thanks in advance. Yes, thank you, Marcus, for this question. And I also noticed that one of our listeners already responded in Slido. So thank you, Danielle. You're an attentive listener. And to answer also live in this webinar, yes, the recordings will be available next week. For anyone who might not know, we have done 4 webinars in total this week. First one was with our Phrase executives, Phrase CEO Georg L. and the VP of AI Research, Alon Lavie. Then we introduced the Phrase Language AI, and yesterday we introduced the Phrase Custom AI. So in total, 4 webinars, and they will all be coming in your inbox next week to watch all of the recordings. Thank you for the question. Next one from Lana. What if I want to use my own templates?
Yeah, that's another one I'll take. I explained earlier that we are constantly working on updating our template library. We've released 6 just to get us kicked off based on what is most common to our customers and also to what our solutions architects build with you. Right now, we don't have the ability to build your own template, but if you have anything that you think is like really specific and valuable that would make sense there as a template, again, we want to hear from you. We are thinking in our minds that as customers are creating the same workflow over and over, then they might want to save that as a template. So again, very much something we're thinking about, but don't have it in the scheduled at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now we have 3 questions from Jim, so let's take it one by one. Thank you for the presentation. Will Phrase build more templates for use cases and requirements you heard from your clients? It seems like building it is still require certain knowledge about JQ and API calls.
I guess I kind of answered that already. I would say yes. And as you mentioned, there's a certain knowledge required about JQ and API calls. Yes, we acknowledge that. That's something of taking a step back. We also want to evaluate, we want to make Orchestrator more accessible to those users who don't have that knowledge of JQ and API calls, particularly any validation of how a JQ works. For me, when I joined the team, I didn't know how to use JQ. There's a lot of validation that goes into that. That's something that we're also thinking about. Succinctly, yes, we will build more templates for use cases that come from our clients. So again, please get in contact with us. And we'll be focusing more on making these more usable if you don't know how to use JQ.
Okay, then taking it a step further, if the client sends our requirements to Phrase, will Phrase build a sample template JSON file for us and we can use it to improve it?
Yes, if you have the relationship isn't the word I'm looking for here, but our wonderful solutions architects will work with you if you have something like that. Yeah, and yes, they will work with you to improve on it. Again, the way Orchestrator works right now, it does involve a little bit of knowledge of how our APIs work. So perhaps you create a workflow and maybe you feel it's not as optimized as it could be. Perhaps there's an inefficient action, or maybe you don't know how a loop works. Speaking to our solutions architects, they have that knowledge to help you with that. So the answer to that essentially is yes.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. And maybe this one is for Christin. Is there an online tutorial to learn more about Phrase Orchestrator?
Yes, I can take that. So we have had several webinars to Phrase Orchestrator, and you can find these on our website under the webinar section and rewatch the webinars. But we also have tutorial videos, like little snippets, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and you can find these under our Phrase YouTube channel. So we have a dedicated YouTube tutorial or Phrase tutorial playlist, and there we'll also have a lot of tutorials to the Phrase Orchestrator. Danielle was also so kind. She actually recorded very short snippets to the new functionalities and capabilities that she introduced today. So to templates, file handling, field picker, and scheduled triggers, you'll also find videos, short videos there. So happy for you to check it out on YouTube.
Thank you, Christin. And a question from Joao. Can I use Phrase Language AI API in an Orchestrator workflow?
Great question. Not presently, but it's happening. As we release more, and I'm sorry to use the word exciting, more exciting features again, think Phrase Language AI API, Custom AI, we want to see that in Orchestrator also. Answer is not right now, but we're already working on how that could be achieved in Orchestrator. So this is happening.
Okay. Thank you so much, Danielle and Christin, for the presentation and for answering all of the questions. I think we can leave it there. I wish everyone a happy Friday and a good weekend ahead. And as I already mentioned, the recordings of all 4 sessions from this week will come into your inbox next week. We'll be happy to hear some feedback from you as well. And there will actually be a survey popping up right after we close this session, so you can let us know how you liked today's webinar, but also suggest some topics for future. So please do let us know. We're very eager to hear from you. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.